ليلة عظيمة مباركة يسن فيها الإكثار من الصلاة على سيدي ومولاي رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه من كل عمل صالح. The night of Jumu'ah is a very blessed night. The barakah and the night in the Sunnah is to increase your salah upon the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام and all good deeds. يروي الإمام أبو داود في سننه بسند حسن عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت. So the hadith tonight collection of Abu Dawood with a reasonable chain of narration. It's a nice story. I think I've narrated this story at least twice before over the last 2.5 years. And it's the final hadith that I'll narrate within the series of issues of marriage. I think this is hadith number 15 or something, or 16. I've narrated a number of them. And we're going to move on to something different, inshallah, starting next week. But I want to end with this nice story that Aisha radiallahu anha tells us. And it's something worth, inshallah, sharing with you. قالت استأذن أبو بكر على النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فأذن له فسمع صوت عائشة عالية. Abu Bakr asked permission to enter the Prophet ﷺ's home, and he was granted the permission. So he entered, and he heard Aisha, his voice was loud, high, and she was yelling. Now Aisha is his daughter, رضي الله عنهما, صديقة بنت صديق. So Abu Bakr, he walked into the house of the home of the Prophet ﷺ, where his daughter lives, and he hears Aisha yelling. قال فلما دخل تناولني ليلطمني وقال أراك ترفعين صوتك على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he entered and he came and he went towards her with his hand up, رضي الله عنه, towards his daughter, saying, is it true that what I'm seeing, am I seeing right? Are you raising your voice to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام? That's what he's saying. ألا أراك ترفعين. He's like, this is a figure of speech saying, am I hearing and seeing correctly? Are you seriously yelling, raising your voice to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام? قال فوقف النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أمامه يحجزه حتى خرج أبو بكر مغضبا. So the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, when he saw Abu Bakr coming towards his daughter, saying that with his hand risen, he stood in front of Abu Bakr رضي الله عنه عليه الصلاة والسلام, standing in front of Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr tries to go right, he goes right. He goes left, the Prophet ﷺ goes left. Wherever Abu Bakr moves, the Prophet ﷺ kind of moves and stands. يحجزه. He's putting himself as a hajiz, as a barrier between Abu Bakr and between Aisha. Abu Bakr understood, so he left the house مغضبا. He was upset. He left the house, he was upset. قال فقال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام كيف رأيتني وقد أنقذتك من الرجل. He looks at his wife and he says, how did you find me as I saved you from the man? How you like me now? Huh? How did you like me as I saved you from the man? قال فمكث أبو بكر أياما. Abu Bakr, it took a few days. فعاد فاستأذن على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فأذن له. A few days went by. Abu Bakr came back and asked for permission to enter the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام's house. قال فدخل فإذا بهما قد اصطلحا. And the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام and Aisha had made up. فقال رضي الله عنه يا رسول الله أدخلاني في سلمكما كما أدخلتماني في حربكما. Allow me to enter into your peace treaty as you allowed me to enter into your war. فضحك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال قد فعلنا. He laughed and he said, yes we will. It's a nice little story. And the piece of it that I'm narrating for you within this series is really the humanity of the Prophet ﷺ and the humanity of his marriage. Meaning, when we talk about the Prophet ﷺ's marriage, we're not talking about something that is outside of this world, that does not exist. Some utopia that you can only read about in books. No, it was a marriage, like any other marriage, where one day they're getting along, and the next day they ain't. And one day things are working out nicely, and the other day they're not. And that's just life. And if it's happening to the Prophet ﷺ, if Rasulullah ﷺ has this, what, you're better than, if you're like, I don't want this in my, what, you're better than the Prophet ﷺ? What are you talking? He had it in his house. What do you want? What are you saying? What are you trying to tell me? Explain to me again. Like, I will not tolerate in this, you're not tolerating in your home, but the Prophet ﷺ can tolerate in his. So you're saying that you're what? Explain to me. It's okay. Elaborate more on what you're trying to say here. Yeah. And when you say that, and you're demanding your wife somehow to be better than Siddiqa Aisha radiallahu anha. No one in this. There are no two better people than the two people in this story. There are no two better human beings than the two people in this story. And they had their good days and they had their bad days. And the Prophet ﷺ's maturity level and Aisha's maturity level made sure that never turned into something that was ugly. Never turned into something where there was harm being inflicted on the other party, or there to be abuse, or there to be hatred, or for it to lead to ruining a household. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ never had children with Aisha. He never had children with Aisha. You know how easy it is to have divorce when there's no children involved after 10 years or 15 years of marriage. There were no children yet. They never did the word ever leave his mouth, alayhi salatu wasalam. Never did he use that with Aisha, nor did Aisha ever use that word in the entirety of her life. Talking about people who have children, who have So think about this. The Prophet ﷺ's household had the good days and had the bad days. When you enter a marriage, you're in it for the good and the bad. You have to take both. There's no other, the deal doesn't work any other way. It just doesn't. You have to accept that that's how it's going to be. And what I love about this story, and I'll end with this for you, is his humor, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's his humor that I think is just fast. I love it. We don't think about him that way, alayhi salatu wasalam, but he had a great sense of humor. And he took himself lightly. And he looked for examples and moments to make sure that he lightened the mood. And he rarely took himself seriously, alayhi salatu wasalam, or allowed something that his wife did or said to anger him to the point where he rarely ever did this, alayhi salatu wasalam. And if there was an example or a moment where he could make things light and make things funny and make things enjoyable, he would do that immediately, alayhi salatu wasalam. And this was a hard moment. He's fighting with his wife, and his father-in-law is hearing it. And now his father-in-law is yelling at his wife. This is a recipe for disaster. This is a recipe for just the whole house to come crumbling down. Yet the Prophet ﷺ immediately, he de-escalates, and he does something that's a little bit funny. And he says it. It doesn't like he does it and then walks away. No, he looks at Aisha and says, how do you like me? As I protected you from the man. He said, from the man. It's her father. But he said from the man, alayhi salatu wasalam, because he's getting her. And it probably diffused a lot of what was going on, and then things worked out. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's how he lived his life. And we have to find ways to live similarly to how he was, alayhi salatu wasalam. And I think this example is just something for us to contemplate and reflect upon. It's a beautiful story. I hope you find it beneficial. يروي الإمام أبو داود في سننه بسند حسن عن عائشة أم المؤمنين قال استأذن أبو بكر على النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فأذن له فسمع صوت عائشة عاليا فدخل يتناولني ليلطمني يقول ألا أراك ترفعين صوتك على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال فوقف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أمامه يحجزه فخرج أبو بكر مغضبا فقال للنبي عليه الصلاة والسلام كيف رأيتني وقد أنقذتك من الرجل فمكث أياما فعاد أبو بكر فاستأذن على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأذن له فإذا بهما قد اصطلحا فقال أدخلاني في سلمكما كما أدخلتماني في حربكما فضحك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال قد فعلنا صدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم.